Today we'll sing the preposition song, linking verb song, and we'll practice labeling, diagramming, and SVLPA sentences. Are you ready to sing your preposition song? Great, let's go. Prepositions. Ba-ba, da, do, ba-ba, da, do, ba-ba, da, do, ba-ba, da, do, about, above, across, after, against, along, amid, among, around, at, atop, before, behind, below, beneath, beside, between, beyond, but by, concerning, down, during, except, for, from, in, inside, into, like, near, of, off, on, onto, out, outside, over, past, regarding, since, through, throughout, to and toward, under, underneath, until, up, upon, with, within, and without. Ba-ba, do, ba-ba, do, ba-ba, do, ba-ba, do. Sometimes two or more words can act as a preposition. For example, according to, ahead of, along with, away from, because of, by way of, due to, except for, in addition to, in back of, in case of, in front of, in spite of, instead of, out of, up to, with the exception of. This is not a complete list. When we look at chart L or these other examples, there are other words out there, but this is a very extensive list and a really good foundation to start with. Prepositions are always followed by a noun or pronoun. The noun or pronoun that follows is called the object of the preposition. The preposition, its object, and the modifiers between them create a prepositional phrase. In the sentence, I hiked over the mountain, the word over is our preposition. We can recognize that from our prepositions list. And then we see the word the, that is our modifier in between. And the word following is mountain, which is a noun and the object of the preposition. We hiked over what? Over the mountain. Now let's look at the sentence, I hiked over. We see the word over again, which we recognize from our prepositions list. However, if the word from your preposition list is not followed by a noun or pronoun, it is simply used as an adverb. Now, let's look at the sentence, the boy hugged his mother in the morning. In this sentence, the preposition in is used. The object of the preposition is morning. The modifier between them is the. The is an article adjective describing which morning? The morning. Now we're going to look at our sentence again. The boy hugged his mother in the morning. We're going to look at labeling our different parts of speech and diagramming the sentence. We are working specifically on prepositions right this moment. So while there are questions that can be asked to determine a prepositional phrase, it is preferred that we memorize the prepositions so that they are able to be recognized when we see them. Then we know we either have an adverb, or if we see that we have a noun or pronoun following it, that would become our object of the preposition, then we would be able to recognize there we have a prepositional phrase. So when looking at our sentence, we have determined in the morning is our prepositional phrase. In is our preposition, so it's labeled as a preposition. The is our adjective describing what morning or which morning, the morning. So it's an adjective. And then morning is our object of the preposition. It is our noun that follows our preposition. And then we're going to go back and kind of look at the rest of our sentence. And we're going to ask ourselves, who or what is this sentence about? Who hugged his mother in the morning? The boy. So boy is going to be our subject, and boy is a noun. So we have a subject noun, and that is how we have labeled it. And then we're going to say, well, what is the boy doing? What has the boy hugged? He hugged his mother. So we have a verb, hugged. We're going to look at that verb, and does this verb transfer any action? Is hug transferring an action? Is he hugging someone? Yes, he's hugging his mother. So that makes mother our direct object. So it's labeled with a DO. And that makes our verb transitive. That's why we have the small t following the V, because it's a transitive verb. The verb hugged is transferring action directly, hugging someone specific. He hugged his mother. His is going to be an adjective. It's describing whose mother? His mother. And then if we look at the word the boy, which boy? The boy. So the is going to be an adjective as well, describing boy, the boy. So now that we've labeled our sentence and we understand what words we have within our sentence, now we can look at labeling and diagramming, our sentence. So when we are diagramming, we start with our solid line, straight horizontal across the page. We have our straight across line, and then first we're going to separate our subject and our verb. So our subject's always going to go first. So we've placed boy. We have our line that cuts right through, and then following that is always going to be our verb or our verb phrase. So in this case, it's hugged. We have boy, subject, hugged, the verb, and when we have a direct object, it is going to follow the verb, just as we have done with a little line that doesn't slice through, but just sits on the sentence, or on the line for our sentence. So the boy hugged, and the direct object, his mother. So, boy hugged mother. We have our subject, our verb, and our direct object. That is our sentence pattern, SVT, DO. Then underneath we have our modifiers. The is our adjective modifying boy. It's the first word in our sentence, so it's capitalized. Then we move to our verb, hugged. Hugged, the prepositional phrase, is modifying, relating to, describing when the boy hugged his mother in the morning. So the prepositional phrase is diagrammed as such. We have our slanted line with our preposition, and then we extend a line out for our object of the preposition, and our adjective modifier, which morning? The morning. It's going to go directly under morning. Then we look at our direct object. We had a modifier for whose mother? His mother. So the adjective, again, describing mother, is going to be on the slanted line directly below mother. So, if you have done this along with me, you have now labeled and diagrammed an SVT DO sentence and diagrammed your prepositional phrase. We just noted that in the morning is modifying a verb, which makes this prepositional phrase adverbial because it is modifying or relating directly to a verb. So this sentence contains an adverbial prepositional phrase. Okay, now we're going to look at the sentence, the book on the table is mine. In the sentence, we again are focusing on our prepositions and our prepositional phrases. So you see that I have already underlined our prepositional phrase. We see the word on from our prepositions list. We recognize that, and we have labeled it with a PR for preposition. Then we have our object of the preposition, table. On what? The table. So we've labeled that with an OP. And then in between, you see we have our modifier, the, which is our adjective. It is describing what table? The table. So we've identified that part and labeled that accordingly. And then we are going to go backwards kind of and ask who or what is the sentence about? Let's see. The book on the table is mine. What on the table is mine? The book. So book is going to be our subject. Book is a noun. So we have labeled that accordingly as well with an SN for our subject and noun. And then in front of book, we have another modifier. We have another adjective. What book? The book. So it is labeled also with an AJ for adjective. And then we need to identify our verb in the sentence. Let's see. The book on the table is mine. What is being said about the book on the table? It is mine. So is going to be our verb. So we would mark a V over our verb, and then we're going to do our question confirmation. We're going to ask ourselves some questions to establish and determine what kind of verb and then what this other word is following our verb. So we will start by asking ourselves, is this verb transferring any action? Is there a word following our verb that is receiving the action of the verb? No, is not transferring action to mine. There's no action being transferred. So then we will ask ourselves, we know it's not a transitive verb, and we know that's not a direct object. And then we'll ask ourselves, is the subject, book, being renamed by another noun or pronoun that follows our linking verb? Okay, so it's telling us this must be a linking verb, but it's not renaming. Mine is not renaming book. So we know that it's not a predicate nominative. So now we're going to ask ourselves another question. Is the subject being described by another word that follows a linking verb? Yes. Mine is describing book. Whose book is it? It's mine. So now we know that we do have a linking verb and we have a predicate adjective. So we've labeled our verb with a little L for linking, and then we have labeled our predicate adjective with a PA for predicate adjective. And now you have completely labeled that sentence. So we're going to go down and look at our diagram here. We have, as always, our horizontal line straight across the page. And then our first dissection is all the way through, and that's always going to separate our subject and our verb. So we had determined book is our subject. So we placed book on the first section where our subject goes. We know that we had a linking verb, and that is. So we've placed that in the space where we place our verbs. And then we knew we had a predicate adjective, and when we have a predicate adjective or a predicate nominative, we're going to use our little diagonal line that's pointing back towards our subject because we're directly describing that subject with that word. So that's why we have our little diagonal line, and we've placed our predicate adjective there, mine. Now we're going to, now we can look at that and we have our sentence pattern. Because that's what sits on our horizontal line are only going to be the words from our sentence pattern. So we have our subject, our linking verb, and our predicate adjective, and that gives us our pattern, SVLPA. Now we start adding our modifiers to our diagram, and our first one we see is the. The is describing book, right? It's modifying what book? The book. It's also the first word in our sentence. So we're going to place our little diagonal line underneath the book, and we're going to write the word the. And now we have placed our first modifier. And then our next modifier is going to be our prepositional phrase, on the table. What is on the table? What is on the table? The book is on the table. It's describing and relating to book. So it's also going to be labeled under book. And for our preposition, again, we do our little diagonal line, We write our preposition on, then we extend the line out to keep those two connected. That's our object of the preposition, table. And then we had a modifier describing what table? The table. So then we're going to do our little diagonal line and place our adjective, our modifier, the. And now you have labeled and diagrammed another sentence. And with this sentence, we want to note that this prepositional phrase is going to be adjectival. You can see that we diagrammed this prepositional phrase underneath our noun, which is our subject, book. It is modifying or relating to a noun, and that makes it adjectival. The previous sentence that we looked at, our prepositional phrase modified or related back to the verb, which made it adverbial. Prepositional phrases will either be adverbial, placed under the verb, or adjectival, placed under a noun. When diagramming, it is helpful if you know the difference between adverbial and adjectival prepositional phrases. When you can recognize the difference, you will know exactly where to place your prepositional phrase. Now we're going to look at our new sentence pattern for this week, which is SVLPA, which stands for our subject, linking verb, and predicate adjective. A few things that are important to know about our predicate adjectives. They are going to be labeled with a PA whenever we are doing our labeling. 1, they are adjectives. 2, they are going to closely follow a linking verb. And 3, they will modify or describe the subject. Now we're going to go ahead and just go over our linking verbs and sing our linking verbs song, because it's going to help us, just like recognizing our prepositions within our sentence, it will help us to be able to recognize, oh, that's a linking verb. There are exceptions, as you'll notice with many other things that we're going over with our grammar. This is a list of linking verbs. The solid green verbs in the first 2 columns are linking verbs, but sometimes, depending on how they're used in our sentence, they could become an action verb. And the last 2 columns are am, are, is, was, were, be, being, and been are linking verbs, but they could also be used as helping verbs, depending on how, again, they are used within our sentence. So, for now, we're just going to look at these as linking verbs because that's how they'll be used in our sentence patterns today. But that was just a little information, so you know that sometimes they can be used differently. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and sing our song. This is to the tune of The Ants Go Marching. It goes like this. A linking verb makes an assertion by joining 2 words. A linking verb makes an assertion by joining 2 words. Feel, become, remain, taste, seem, appear, look, sound, stay, smell, grow, am, are, is, was, were, be, being, been. These are the linking verbs. This is just a little bit more helpful information about our linking verbs and our predicate nominatives and predicate adjectives. A linking verb connects the subject with a predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. So it is the connector between the two, the subject and either the predicate nominative or the predicate adjective. Now the differences between our predicate nominative and our predicate adjective are a predicate nominative, they are nouns or pronouns that come after the linking verb and they rename the subject. The key difference there, they rename the subject. The predicate adjective, these are going to be words that come after the linking verb, and they are going to describe the subject. Key there, they describe the subject. Now we're going to get a little practice with our new sentence patterns, our SVLPA. We're going to look at the sentence. Tristan is awesome. So, we're going to start with labeling, and then we will diagram our sentence. So you can write this down, or you can just follow along and do it along with me. Our first question we're going to ask is, who or what is our sentence about? Who or what is awesome? Tristan. Tristan is awesome. So Tristan is going to be our subject, and Tristan is it a noun or a pronoun? Correct. It is a noun. So we're going to label that with our SN for our subject, noun. Okay, and now we're going to ask ourselves, what is being said about our subject? Tristan is what? He is awesome. So Tristan is going to be our verb. So we can label the verb with a V. And we'll ask ourselves our next question. Does anyone or anything receive the action of the verb? Is there a word following our verb that's going to receive action from it? Nope. So we know it's not a transitive verb, and we know that awesome is not a direct object. So now we'll ask ourselves our next question. Is the subject being renamed by another noun or pronoun that follows our verb? Can awesome rename Tristan? Nope, cannot. So we know that it's not a predicate nominative. Now we'll ask ourselves our next question. Is the subject being described by another word that follows our verb? Can awesome describe Tristan? Yes. So we know that we've got a predicate adjective, and that is going to be our linking verb. So we can go ahead and put a little L after our V. We have a linking verb, and we can label awesome with a PA for predicate adjective. Very, very good. Okay, and now we're going to start our diagramming. Do you remember how to start your diagram? Yes, we draw our horizontal line, our line straight across our page, and we just need to make room to write all three of our words because we have a subject, and we have a verb, and we have a predicate adjective. And then our next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw what? A vertical line up and down, straight up and down, a line that's going to dissect our line and run straight through it. And on one side, we're going to have the first side, we'll have our what? Our subject. So we're going to write Tristan in our first space. And then immediately after that, on the other side of our line, we'll write what? Yes, our verb. So we have Tristan, we have our dissecting line, and then we have our verb is. Now we have a predicate adjective. So what kind of line are we going to draw? Is it going to be a little diagonal line shooting back towards our subject, or is it just going to be straight up and down? Right. It's going to be a little diagonal line sitting on the line that's pointing back towards our subject, because awesome is our predicate adjective. We're going to place it in that space after our diagonal line, and that little diagonal line shooting back to our subject because it's describing our subject. So now you have labeled and diagrammed, and I will let you just check your work, and you can see here the labeling and the diagram. Excellent job. Now, to complete our mini class for today, we are going to look at one more sentence with our SVLPA sentence pattern. This sentence, as you can see, is the little flower smelled lovely. So we will start with our labeling, and then we will do our diagrams. We will start with our first question. Who or what is our sentence about? Who or what smelled lovely? Yes, the flower. So flower is going to be our subject. So we're going to label over flower with an S for subject. And is flower a noun or pronoun? Correct. It's a noun. So it'll be an SN for subject noun. Now we are going to ask ourselves what is being said about our subject. What's being said about flower? That it smelled. It smelled lovely. So smelled is going to be our verb. We'll label that with our V. And then we can leave our little blank space after that. And we're going to ask ourselves some more questions so we can determine what kind of verb and what kind of word this is following our verb. So the next question that we're going to ask is there anything that is following a word, anything receiving the action smelled, anything being transferred? No, nothing's being transferred. We know it's not a transitive verb, and we know that lovely is not a direct object. Okay, so now we'll ask ourselves our next question. Is the subject being renamed by a noun or pronoun that's following our verb? Is lovely renaming flower? Nope, it's not renaming it, so we know it's not a predicate nominative. Now we'll ask ourselves our next question. Is the subject being described by another word that follows our verb? Is lovely describing flower? Yes. So we know we have a predicate adjective, and smelled is our linking verb. So we can label our verb with the little L, VL, for a linking verb, and then we will label lovely with a PA for predicate adjective. Now, if we look back, we have two other words in our sentence. The little flower. Our little and the describing the flower. What kind of flower? A little flower. Which flower? The flower. Yes, they're describing our subject, so they are going to be adjectives. So we can label the with an AJ and little with an AJ for adjective. They are modifiers describing our subject. And you have labeled your sentence. We have adjective and an adjective, our subject noun, our linking verb, and our predicate adjective. Now we will start our diagram. We'll draw our straight across line and our little dissecting line to separate our subject and our verb. And the first space is always going to be for what? Yes, our subject. So we'll write our subject in the first space. That is going to be flower. And then after our little dissecting line that cuts all the way through, we're going to write our verb, which is, yes, smelled. Now it's time to write our next little line after our verb. And is this one going to be straight up and down sitting on our line? Or is it going to be the angled diagonal line pointing back towards our subject sitting on the line? Correct. It's going to be the little diagonal line pointing back towards our subject because lovely is what? It's describing our subject, flower. It's our predicate adjective. So now we'll draw our little diagonal line pointing back towards our subject and write our predicate adjective, lovely. So sitting on our line, we see our sentence pattern. We have our S, VL, PA. But we have two modifiers. We have two words that are describing our subject. So they're going to go where? Under our subject. Correct. The is the first word in our sentence, so it's capitalized and it'll remain capitalized. We're going to write our little diagonal line under flower, and we're going to write the word the. And then we had another modifier describing what kind of flower? A little flower. So we'll draw our other diagonal line underneath flower and write our word little. And you guys have just labeled and diagrammed another sentence for our SVLPA sentence pattern. You can check your work. I'm so proud of you. Keep up the good work. Keep practicing, because the more that you do this, the more that you read about it and practice it, the more familiar you're going to be with it, the easier it's going to be for you to do and understand. So yeah, I'm so proud of you. I hope you have a great day. I hope this was super helpful. See you next time.